Bill Akman is right. People do make an enormous difference. You have to have the right people, though. And to talk about that, we welcome Bill George back to Market Makers. He's a professor of management practice at the Harvard Business School. He's a director at ExxonMobil, Goldman Sachs, and the Mayo Clinic. And he is the former chairman and CEO of Medtronic. Bill, it is always great to see you, and thank you for taking some time out in Minneapolis to spend with us here on Market Makers. Talk to us about what you see going on at JC Penney, and in particular, Akman's decision to step down from the board.
Well, it's about time. This shows the pitfalls, Eric, of having an activist like Akman with short-term goals on a company's board that's been in a state of decline for 2 decades. You can't turn a company, a retailer particularly, around in that kind of period of time. And Akman put a lot of pressure on Ron Johnson and the board to move very fast and try to get it turned around in a quarter or two. It doesn't work. They abandoned their customers. They lost 30% of their customer base. Now Ullman's trying to get it back, and they're in deep trouble. The only thing I agree with Akman about is that leaders make a big difference. Ron Johnson's not a bad person, but he's not going to turn that place around like Akman wanted him to and trying to make it into an Apple. And so it was a big mistake, and Akman's got a lot of egg on his face on this one. Where do they go from here? I think they have a tough road to hoe. For sure, no CEO worth his or her salt is going to come on that board when they're having a board dispute like this. And these board disputes lead to no good things. I'm very concerned. You know, Akman, this is the same Akman that tried to take over the Target board in 2009. And thank goodness he didn't, and Target stood tall, and their stock's up 75%. And just in the last year, JC Penney's down 40%, or Akman's down about 50%. So no good things are happening from these short-term games.
Bill, Robert Kaplan, formerly of Goldman Sachs, gentleman whom I know you know well, now an senior associate dean at Harvard Business School, told us this morning that he believes that Bill Akman stepped down from the board because he has a fiduciary conflict, and he is probably fixing for a proxy fight come the spring if JC Penney does not begin to do what he wants. Do you agree?
I have no idea what Akman's going to do next, but I think the best thing he could do probably is to cap his losses and move on, because nothing good is going to happen at JC Penney as long as they're having this dispute. They'll never get a decent CEO, and they've got a long-term turnaround. This is a 5-year effort. Look at Eddie Lambert. He's been trying to turn Sears around for 7 years, and Kmart, and every year they have fewer retail customers coming in to buy apparel. And so I don't look for good things to happen in the short term. That board's got to set its sights on a long-term turnaround, bringing back the customers they lost, and then steadily upgrading, because right now they can't compete with their peers, and they're not competing with Target and retailers like that either.
Well, do you think there's any merit then to some of the demands that Bill Akman was making before he resigned from the board, and that is bring in a new chairman, bring in a new CEO? Mike Ullman only supposed to be the interim CEO?
Well, I think there's merit in having a long-term CEO. I'm not a believer in CEOs going back into companies, unless maybe they're the founder like Howard Schultz. But I think that, no, there is not a lot of merit in all of Akman's demands. I think he was trying to salvage his ego on the losses he had. But, you know, if I may, just contrast that with Best Buy that was having its own board dispute with founder Dick Schultz. Hubert Joly comes in a year ago. First thing he does is he sets his mind to resolve the situation with Schultz. It takes him 6 months, 8 months. Meanwhile, he's revamping the management team. He's not trying to turn it around overnight, and he's put in place a very strong story today. He hadn't turned it around overnight, but it's clearly on a path to recovery. That's what you have to do. Step-by-step improvement. Get a good online franchise. Spruce up your stores. Strengthen the management team, but you can't do it with a war in the boardroom. This is never going to work, and that's the problem with short-term activists when you have long-term problems.
Bill, the early results at Best Buy notwithstanding, why is it so hard to turn around retailers?
Well, because a public image has a certain image of what is J.C. Penney, and people who go there, they have a certain niche in their market. They can't abandon those customers and make them into a high-end store overnight. You have to do it step by step, like Target has done, to become more casual chic. They're still treating and serving the low-end. The customer wants the lowest price, but they're steadily upgrading and bringing middle-class and upper-middle-class women and men into the stores. And so you have to do on that stepwise, and you always have to be fashion-forward. Johnson tried to do do that, but you can't just leapfrog over your existing customer base. And so you can never, that's the problem. You've got an existing customer base, and you have to move to the new, but you can't abandon the old overnight in retail. If you do, you lose it all. And I think that's what JC Penney is very much at risk of happening right now.
Terrific stuff, Bill. Great to see you, and thank you. Bill George is a professor of management at the Harvard Business School.